Would you like to not only thrive, but thrive on purpose? Then this podcast is for you, inspiring you to embark on a transformational journey. Your host is Elena, and she's looking forward to enabling you to thrive on purpose.
Episode 3: Attitude, Simplicity, Impact. Guest: Simon Tyler. Simon Tyler is an organizational speaker, facilitator, author, and coach. He's been professionally coaching for over 20 years, working with over 1,000 one-on-one clients and thousands more in groups and events. His many observations, insights, and findings have led to the creation of his books, the Keep It Simple book, the Impact book, and most recently the Attitude book, which have been published in many languages across the world. Simon Tyler is a renowned and recognized voice on the topics of simplicity, personal impact, and attitude. He has had a profound and positive effect on many individuals and organizations in these areas, leading to significant enhancements in morale, mental health, motivation, creativity, and purpose. His honest, entertaining style, his life and work experiences, and his written work continue to inform and inspire many leaders and coaches across the world. Hey, Simon.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ellie. Good morning, Simon. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be a guest speaker on the Thrive on Purpose podcast. So I remember last time when we met each other, maybe it was 2017, many years passed on. So what was the best thing that happened to you since we last met?
It's been a very, obviously for many people across the world, it's been very, very interesting last 4 years, not least the last 18 months, because of the COVID and how that's affected us all in lots of different ways. But since that time, which is really interesting for my journey, I guess 2017 through to the beginning of 2020 were incredibly successful for me. So my speaking business grew. I won some new clients. I was delivering some management training for a really young group of managers in a new, relatively new startup company. It's really exciting. And then it stopped abruptly, obviously in March 2020. And when I say abruptly, I mean it just stopped. So probably 3/4 of my activity ceased because I'd successfully shifted my business to be more speaking and events. And that's what stopped. And it was, whoa, okay, this is really interesting. So I've enjoyed during this journey both ends of the emotional scale in terms of the joy and freedom of, I'm here. I can sit at peace, reinvent myself, rethink things, think whatever I like, write whatever I like. And at the same time, an experience I'm sure is common to many people is, what am I going to do? Where's my business going to... I can exist for a while, but it's going to run out. Money's going to run out. What am I going to do with my time? I can't kick my heels all the time. So, as I say, the two ends of the emotional scale have been quite interesting for me because I like to think a lot and I tend to overthink. It's been a big criticism of me from many people over the years. I really did overthink it. And there are a couple of points in the COVID journey that were quite low and quite dark in terms of personal sort of introspective examination. You know, what do I want to recreate? Do I just simply want to return everything to be exactly as it was, if that's possible? Or do I want to reinvent, do something else, do nothing, travel the world? So all sorts of ideas, all were competing in my head for attention and thought and investigation. And you know, that's been quite an interesting journey. So it's led me to perhaps go back to some basics that have served me so well over the years, and not just revisit them, but work them through. The whole, my thoughts around simplicity all came back up again. So I've had to to do that, do some good groundwork all over again.
And what was the winning attitude? Obviously you had a big mental battle.
Yeah, obviously my most recent book, which was just over 2 years ago, the Attitude book, and I suppose that was most fresh in my mind. And I remember when I was writing it thinking, well, I'm never going to actually finish writing this book. Because I'd been given a deadline by the publisher, which was great. That's exactly what I needed. But the more I investigated about attitude, the more I investigated in terms of what you could do about it, some of the practical steps to shift your attitude, the more I realised there's so much more I could write. How am I ever going to end this book? It's an endless book. So it was quite tough to draw a line on it on the publisher's deadline day, because as soon as I'd sent the manuscript off, I was thinking, but there's so much more I could write. There's more. So it's still, I'm very pleased with the areas I covered, 50 chapters, but obviously there's more. And that, as I say, being most fresh in my thinking, served me well. And I'm able to observe what my attitude is doing all the time. It's almost like a free spirit on its own. So if it's up, it's down, it's not sure. And I've got one sort of anchor point, the middle point of my attitude. And I've talked about this at events and with clients as well in coaching terms, that it's important for us with our attitude range to find a middle point. And that middle point is something we know we can go to. It feels stretching if we feel low, and it feels almost irrelevant if we feel high. But have your midpoint. And I've got a midpoint, and it's a picture on my wall, beautiful scenery with a little wooden sign in the top of the hill, and it says, everything is going to be okay. And I look at that sign, it's up, as I say, I stare at it every single day. And on some days I can recall thinking, well, of course it is. Everything is okay. It's great. I just had this great 2.5 years. But other days I'd look at it and think, really? Is everything going to be okay? Could it possibly? And on those days I know I've got to do the work to come back to my middle. And it has, and it's helped me. I've had, as I say, October last year was dark, and January, February this year, probably seasonally as well, and we had further lockdowns in the UK, and it was quite oppressive and compounded sort of my darkness and my dark thoughts about what am I going to do? That was the time I needed to hold that sign, hold that picture, and say everything will be okay. Even if I don't right now believe it will, that's my midpoint. I'm going to act as if I knew that everything's okay, and it just feels slightly better.
Yeah, so this is how you pick yourself up. I guess each one of us has their own way. And the most important thing, as you said, is just to be able to observe your attitude, to be able to observe your own thought and feelings and emotions as our, navigator. They just give us a message, give us the message where we are at now and what we need to do to move to a better place, to a better space.
Yeah, and if you don't observe, if you don't invest in a few moments every day or every hour to just observe where am I at right now? What is it like to be me right now? I do that investigation often, so much so that I don't even think about doing it. It's just happening. And that allows me to realign, check the navigator, to use that metaphor that you've used. Am I still on course? Do I need to just do a little bit of course correction? Because otherwise, hours, days, weeks could go past, and aspects of you triggered by your attitude change. Your behaviour, your language, your moods, and it affects your productivity, your relationships with colleagues, your relationships with family. Just tiny little bit of not quite where you'd want it to be, and unless you've done the investigation, all of a sudden, as I say, you might be 2 or 3 weeks down the line and you've got to do some big corrective work, apologising to people, backtracking and saying, no, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, and so on.
Yeah, true. That's true. Very true. I guess we benefit from this, that we are coaches ourselves, and with the time being, we're more capable of observing ourselves. It's not an easy exercise, though. I mean, I call it detached involvement, to be involved in what's going on, but at the same time to be detached and to be able to observe what's going on with you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And as a coach, clearly we think about that and we read about that, we practice that detached involvement. And it can be, sometimes you might misread it, you'll become too detached. Sometimes you misread it, become too involved. But that's the course we intend to travel, detached involvement. And knowing that, perhaps you could say that's more challenging for a coach because we're aware of it. Whereas people who aren't in coach land aren't aware of it, so they just travel the course of being too involved in their situation or too detached and so on. And our job is to pull people back to their middle line, whatever that is. And often as they do the expression, an English expression says, the plumber's house is the worst plumbed. I don't you have that expression, which the plumber knows what to do.
Similar expression.
But he or she will never get around to plumbing their own house. So as a coach, the coach's house is the worst coached. And I can absolutely confirm that from time to time.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I agree with you. And for our audience, who's Simon? How can you describe yourself with just a few words, maybe?
Okay. I'm 54 and have been coaching for probably all my life, if I was to look back and ascribe the expression coaching on it. So I have been a coach. I was called Simple Simon when I was a kid by the milkman, funny enough. And of course I railed against it. I'm not simple, and I took it as an insult. I'm not simple. And until I was coached by a guy called Drew Roselle, which must now be getting on for 15 years ago, maybe more, he's just invited me to accept the moniker Simple. Just accept, be Simple Simon. And there was a stony silence in our coaching dialogue for what seemed like many minutes. It probably was only a minute or two. I thought, okay, let's explore that. We began to explore it, and it became clear that my approach to situations was to simplify it. You know, I've had one or two complicated jobs, but I've approached them in very simple ways. I tend to ask, like many coaches, I tend to ask the question that's probingly simple in its construction, that checks people's thinking, makes them reconsider the situation from a simple stance. And that, in my experience, always helps. Always. So I am the simplest with an I, yes, which I claim, and I try to describe that's what I do. And I love speaking. I love the challenge of speaking to people. And in there as well, I've always liked to try and entertain people. So I perhaps in an early career shift could have taken the route of trying to become an entertainer or maybe a comedian, but I was never brave enough, or probably never really had the material. But I like to bring the lightness and the entertainment to the way I speak and present, and always have. So I enjoyed shifting my coaching business. How can I help people, which I like to do, and entertain them, and move their businesses forward? I didn't overthink that, but that's almost what was my intent. And that became my product, my speaking product. And on the journey, wrote several books, capturing... it's interesting aside, I had a really tough business period, which I think was 2000 and... if I remember right, 2012. And I'd lost a major client, coaching work, events work. And a client of mine emailed me and said, all the simple notes that are written, I was writing a simple note, just a little observation, every 2 or 3 weeks. They said, have you got them all captured? I don't know, in a folder or in a book? And it suddenly dawned on me, well, wow, there's a book in there. I've already written the material for it. So I went ahead and wrote what became The Simple Way. Got that published. I was just about to self-publish it, found a publisher. And it was at a time when my marriage was breaking down too, so I wasn't really full of life at that time. And I can remember that book came out, it launched, I wasn't really full of beans, as the expression goes, and it was a bit of a damp launch. But it was my book. It became my business card. It became my almost the cue card for the way I spoke and present, and really got me on the hill with my flag on it that said the Simplicity Hill. And subsequent to that, I've obviously written a few other books. The Keep It Simple book, which is pretty much the same theme, the Attitude book, and the Impact book, which have been translated. I'm very fortunate they've been translated in many languages now, and they're across the world.
Wow.
So that's been my journey. That's a long way around of saying who is Simon, but Simon's in there somewhere, in that story somewhere.
Yeah, definitely Simon is in that story, and I can definitely confirm what you said, because I've been part of an event where you were speaker, and I've been fascinated of, this lightness you create in the room, and there's a lot of fun. And I guess simplicity is at the core of what we do as coaches, because we basically help people simplify complex situations. And we'll going to talk a little bit about it further today. So I guess who are you is how you also make people feel. And that's exactly what I confirmed from my experience with you, that you made me feel light, and it was entertaining, and it was really enjoyable. And congratulations for the Attitude book. How many languages?
I've got a few of the copies. I'm staring up at my shelf now. The different books have been translated in different languages. So there's Japanese, there's Hungarian, there's French, Malaysian.
Wow.
What else is up there? Other languages, and they've all got their own. Some of them in some of the books in one, and some in all three, and so on. So quite curious.
Amazing. Oh, Japanese. I'm impressed. Maybe we can translate it in Bulgarian.
Obviously, that book is written, as Japanese books are, from back to front. That's the way you read it, which is really curious to look at that.
Absolutely. Wow. Simon, when did your journey to discover your purpose start? Because you're very purpose-driven, I see that. And when was that moment back in time when something triggered you to start?
Yeah, you make the observation, I come across as purpose-driven. I don't feel that I am, but perhaps if I was to step back, maybe that's how it looks. It's a lovely question. When did my journey of discovering that purpose happen? It's just been the whole way. I think through my career, I was never really predetermined about the route I wanted to follow. I was just open to the opportunities, and as an opportunity presented itself to me, if it felt good and the people around me that I trusted said, go for it, I went for it. And pretty much they've all panned out. One or two were slow routes, but I seem to, again, not knowingly, but back in those days, my middle point of my attitude, everything's going to be okay. Everything has been okay. Even at the tough turns, they've all worked their way through. So in terms of my sense of purpose, the observation piece that we were talking about has been probably part of my purpose renewal all the time. What feels good? What am I good at? What are people noticing and happy about in terms of the impact I have with them? Well, I'll just do some more of that, and I'll find other ways to do it and other people to do that for and with, and I followed that path. And I know I like speaking, and I know I'm effective as a coach, so I'll just keep doing that. And through the challenge of the COVID period, that's what's pulled me through. I'll just keep being me, and I've tried to be truer and truer and truer to myself all the time. And each time as I look back, if I were to look back in 3 years, you started with 2017, if I were to look back 10 years, if I were to look back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I didn't know who I was all that time. And it's just been the process of becoming truer and more honest with myself about who I am, what I'm here to do, and just keep doing it. And many of the things I've written about, and I'm sure we might pick this up later, there's one particular piece which is in the Keep It Simple book, which is called 343. And it notionally describes the 3 things, or the 10 things that we're up to as a human being, 3 that you're awesome at, 3 that you're rubbish at, and 4 in the middle that come with the turf with where you are now. And that process, if you go through that and make sure you spend more and more of your time doing the 3 things you're awesome at, the essence of you, the things that you love doing, the things that excite you, challenge you, stretch you, if you spend more time doing that and less time, if possible, no time doing the bottom 3, so outsource them, swap with someone, pay someone, that you'll move your 3-4-3 all the time. That whole set of 10 shifts. And I think having spoken that at conferences so many times, I have taken my own medicine on that. And there's very, very few things in my life that I'm involved in that I don't want to do or would rather not do. They've gone. And I've ridden perhaps the criticism, but they're not there now. So I tend to have shifted my life to the top end of, in my terms, my 3-4-3 all the time.
Yeah, congratulations, because you're doing it your own way, and not many people are brave to follow that path, to do it their own way. And it's lovely, because the more you're aligned with your essence and with who you truly are, the more you nurture what your passions are, the more you're coming closer to your purpose. Because for me, purpose is something that goes beyond your personal interests, being it a hobby, a passion, a hobby, and it goes beyond. You're serving others, and you have served so many people out there. So that's why I said you're very purpose driven, and you have been true to that path. So that's amazing. That's amazing. And is there a moment, a particular moment maybe in life, or a trigger or a aha moment? Because for many people there is something that triggers that, or it's being just, you've been aware, and throughout the journey you have been just being true to yourself.
Yeah, I get that question. I wouldn't wish tough times on anyone, but I will say that the toughest times in my life have been the biggest learnings, the biggest aha, if you like, is to use your expression. And from them, my life has taken a shift. At the time of those dark times happening, I would rather have not had them. But at each of those events, my life has taken a shift forward. Yes, I've had some lovely successful moments, but proportionally, I'd say my life has moved more from the darker than the more bright and shining success moments. So the times of when I've experienced perhaps an emotional extreme, so doubt, I don't like doubt as an emotion when it comes up, but when it comes up now, I suppose I'm not happy when it arrives, but it's like, well, okay, I can feel a bit of doubt now. So what is that? It just triggers me into investigating. Can I simplify this? Can I find a more certain peace in the middle of doubt? So as an example, does that make sense in terms of, again, I hear it in sport, you shouldn't dwell too much on failures, but sometimes you learn more in the failures than you do in the great successes.
Absolutely. And you're dwelling for the purpose of learning. You're not just dwelling because you dwell and you keep the same repetitive thoughts, but you want to learn. So it depends on the attitude and how you approach this dwelling, if I may say so. So it makes perfect sense to me. I asked you this question on purpose because what I've noticed with my personal story, and of course with many clients I work with, that first they go through some kind of painful experience. Unfortunately, this is the cycle of life, and this just makes them investigate, as you said, and to go deeper. And this is the moment when they maybe are on soul-searching journey and start discovering who they truly are. So that's what happened with me as well.
There's something in there as well. There's the Kubler-Ross change curve, which many people will be familiar with, which shows the emotional response, the scale of how it feels on the journey of when anything ever happens, going through denial, then resistance, and so on, that whole journey. And I love referring to that because we do follow that change curve, but it might last 10 minutes or it might last 10 years. And my awareness of my reaction, so I talked about doubt. So when I'm overwhelmed with doubt, I suppose my advice to people would be treat yourself really kindly Notice what's going on, but be really kind. Just allow that. Because if I want to mope or feel miserable or glum for a little bit, then I'm going to. I'm fortunate I've got some great friends and colleagues around me. And when I mentioned January, February 2021 this year, it was quite dark. And a good friend of mine challenged me, not just challenged me, but he badgered me to go for a walk every day. Because my body wanted to just be still and be miserable and stagnant. And he would chase me, he would call me, send me texts to make sure by the middle of the afternoon I'd gone for my walk, about an hour every day. And the movement itself, much has been written about movement, very important. But I was able to take that sort of misery, if you like, with me on the walk. By the time I come back from the walk, my relationship with my misery had changed a bit. And that's good. And I think that helped me get through the change curve each time a little bit faster, which allows me to get through. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, something bad happens, it's all going to be okay, move on. Doesn't work like that. We're human beings. We need to look after ourselves. As I say, be kind, notice what's going on. If you want to go and have a cry or slump on the sofa, do it. Have a nice slump. Be brilliant at slumping. Have a lovely, miserable hour if that's what you feel like you really want. But then go for a walk, move it around, see what's coming up next.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we are not very good, in allowing things to go through us, especially these experiences. So it completely resonates with me. Absolutely. Wow. All right. So attitude, impact, simplicity. You talk about it, you inspire a lot based on your own research and knowledge and what you have written. So what do you think is the right order, if I may ask? Impact, simplicity, attitude, or what's the right order according to you?
Well, thinking about that, if I have all my books in my bag when I meet somebody, what's the first book I tend to give them? It tends to be simplicity, because simplicity tends to be the best way in to the way we currently show up in the world. Just let's simplify a few things. And also that's where our first resistance seems to happen. Resistance, well, no, I can't simplify that. It's supposed to be complicated. No, okay, and my challenge is always, okay, well, let's just go in simplicity first. Then, even though I didn't write them in this order, if we can become more and more aware of our attitude, so from a simple foundation, start shifting your attitude so you're in a way that you start attracting to you the things you want, then you're in a position to change the impact you have in the world with your community, with your stakeholders, with your customers, clients, colleagues, whatever it might be, your impact can change. So I would say that, having thought that through, SAI. I would prefer SIA because she's one of my favourite singers, Sia. But it's not. It would be simplicity, attitude, and impact.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how easy it is for people to really simplify? I mean, it's
Well, sometimes it's surprisingly easy, but people resist it because they will maybe living patterns. They're living out things the way they think life should be, or they've been told it was, and they might have observed others, colleagues, older members of the family, people they respect and admire doing things in a certain way, so they would do it. So sometimes just the intervention of, could this be simpler? It's just a little inquiry. Can stop people, and you can find some easy, quick wins, some simplifying stuff that changes patterns. But there are aspects of simplicity they're tough. You need to change some habits, some patterns, some ways of thinking, ways of doing. So in company terms, when I work with bigger teams and across a company, we're talking about changing processes that might be really ingrained in the company. Well, it's just the way we do it. Yeah, but you don't have to. So in those situations, my job is to become slightly more rebellious and to be and represent rebelliousness within the team in a professional sense, obviously.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, and I guess you need someone, as you mentioned earlier about your friend, or someone who can really challenge you and make you think how to simplify and how you can view the situation or make it really simple.
Yeah, because we need people around us, and that's always a good thing to look at. Where am I seeking advice? Where am I being influenced? Again, it's been written about in a number of different ways, including in my books, which is the 5 people that influence you the most. Again, that's in the Keep It Simple book. And just have a look at who's influencing me right now. Is it my spouse? Is it my best friend that I see all the time? Is it my main colleague, the person I sit next to at work, whoever it might be? And then I would look at, well, what's their approach to life and situations right now? And my approach to life and situations will be a product of those 5 people that influence you the most. So if it's not going in the way you want, you might need to shift that 5. It doesn't mean ignore them, but it might mean spend more time with some other people. And that's become, I think, a big challenge for many of us during lockdown and the various lockdowns in different countries, in that we've spent more time on our own, more time in our family bubbles. So therefore the inflow of inspiration, challenge has changed. We need to make a conscious effort to reach out and go and get that, or make it part of a daily habit to listen to or watch some inspiring videos or audios of people that challenge the way you think, hopefully like your podcast, like my podcasts. As much as he's passed, I still consume lots of Wayne Dyer audios and videos, because I find him he was a very inspirational man, and how wonderful he continues to inspire me, many years after his passing. And it's, unless you actively make it part of your day, all of a sudden your inflow has changed, and you won't notice until you do notice.
Yeah, absolutely. And how simplicity can help us thrive. Because obviously we talk about thriving and that kind of experience in this podcast.
Well, I'm bound to say it's the fundamental. It's the one. If you're going to choose one thing, I would say it's simplicity. Of course I would say that, because I represent that, and I run round every day metaphorically waving the simplicity flag. It is. And often we don't realise that almost the creeping effect of complications, which is different, if I can say, from complexity. Complexity is, life has some wonderful complexities that we can sit with. Nature, at the same time, is both complex and simple. There's some incredible complexities happen to produce the amazing nature that is around us all the time. But at the same time, it's really simple. But it's not complicated. And in life, we confuse complicated and complex, and we allow them to be the same, and they're not. Complications hurt. Complications block our thinking and our creativity. Complications slow us down and divert us from the course that we would really prefer to travel. That's where simplicity helps us thrive. It cuts through complications and lets us sit happily alongside complexity.
Oh, I love that. This is really, I never thought about it, but actually we as humans, we make things complicated. Otherwise, life is complex, and I love your example with nature. Nature is complex and simple. And it challenges a lot if we're able to sit in stillness and just observe and listen.
Yeah. How simple is that? To sit and observe and listen. That's such a simple practice. And you can then sit with complexity happily. And that's when you'll define the difference between that and complications. And there's so many examples, not just nature. I remember it's MIT, the technology brain house, if you like, in the US. I remember watching a wonderful presentation about the first. It was the what was it called? The music, the iPhone music thing.
Mm-hmm. iTunes?
The little machine.
Ipod?
Yes, thank you. The first iPod that came out, I remember, and it represented almost what I'm saying, which is it was so simple. It had play, forward, backward, stop. And then the home button in the middle that took you back to your menu. And that was it. So in essence, 5 buttons. That was all it was. Behind it was the complexity of your music library, the way it's collated, the production of sound, sending up the cable to your headphones. How complex was that? But it wasn't complicated. It was simple. And that is a non-natural way of describing the same.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. Because, going back to nature, obviously I love nature, and I love to sit and observe and contemplate and reflect. So then the nature is complex, as human nature is complex, but if you pause, if you sit, this is how you push the play button of your Ipod, if I may connect, and just that, and then trust it and listen. That's the most difficult thing. I found people have difficulty really listening. And when I talk about listening, I have in mind that aspect of listening to yourself. We're not used to listen to ourselves. Not at all.
And I think you capture the nature of simplicity. And you've said that in terms of, this is what leaders should do. Because quite often people would say to me, well, how do I bring simplicity in the company? But what you just said is exactly it. Your ability, your confidence, your trust in yourself to take a moment to just listen. I think doing nothing is underrated. I invite people often to do nothing, even if it's just for 25 seconds. Just do nothing for 25 seconds every few minutes. It's a brilliant approach, such a simple approach. A friend of mine, Richard Maddox, who's written the energy book, and he's investigated energy and how we can boost our energy and the different forms of energy. He talks about every hour, the importance of getting up and just standing up and stretching and moving away from our desk or away from whatever you're doing every hour. And I invite people to do the same. I've taken that inspiration. But I also invite people just to go and stand and just do nothing. Because we all have a gap fill strategy, which is, here's a gap. There's 5 minutes before my next Microsoft Teams or Zoom meeting or telephone call. Right, okay, I've got 5 minutes. What shall I do? And you'll have a gap-filling strategy. You'll look at your phone. You'll check all your social media apps. You'll refresh your email. You might start replying to one of the big emails you've been intending to reply to. So you do part of a task that you know you're never going to have time to finish it. And then all of a sudden, the 5 minutes has gone, and probably the 6 minutes have gone as well, and you're a minute late for the next thing. As opposed to the wonderful simplicity of nothing, because that never really is nothing, to sit, listen if you want, observe if you want, contemplate what you can hear, contemplate the tastes that are revolving around your mouth right now, contemplate the feelings you have physically around your body, sitting in your chair, the way your clothes are hanging on yourself right now, the noises you can hear around you, just like a sensory check-in. Really simple. And it just brings everything back to the middle.
But does this depend on your attitude in general?
Yeah, because if your attitude has been set up consciously or unconsciously that I have no time, I'm running out of time, that I've got so much to do, I've got an inordinate amount, I'm never going to have enough time to do all the things I really want to do, I feel like I'm missing out on the main thing, I'm not sure if I'm focusing on the right thing right now, all of that can be running almost like a program in the background of you, that's setting up your attitude to be slightly anxious, slightly on edge, inclined to just do stuff. And that as an attitude, all of a sudden you're in the do stuff mode, which may or may not be important for your journey. So your attitude needs a cleanup. And I see that in people. I see it's just, okay, well, let's correct some of those. Let's write down what you think you're saying to yourself. I'm running out of time. No, you're not. We've all got the same amount. And actually, all we've got, let's just say, we've all got is today, this hour. What are my choices right now? What could I actually focus on for the next hour? What would I like to focus on? What might be the distractions that could take me away from this thought in the next hour? Can I mitigate those? Can I see them off early? And just it's almost an attitude interrupt to change to the attitude that is more aligned to what you want. That can be tough because you don't notice, and many hours have gone past, or days, or weeks, and you believe you're running out of time. And what the world brilliantly does, and our brains brilliantly do, is it will prove to us what we are saying we think is true. So if you think you're running out of time, your brain, your world will prove to you that you are running out of time. The phone will ring, bizarrely, a little bit more regularly. Your emails will ping. There'll be somebody at the door delivering a parcel. Oh, I don't need them delivering the parcel now. It will all seemingly align to prove to you what your current attitude says. Change your attitude and it will change.
Yeah, and this is the urgentia attitude. You were just describing the urgentia attitude and how to challenge with questions this attitude and to make a shift.
Yeah, and thank you very much. Urgentia is one of the words I made up. Describes another chapter.
It's a lovely note. I love that simple note. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot, which is our addiction to urgency, and it's almost quite an easy one to go in and talk to a company about, because most companies experience addiction to urgency, which is where they've lost the definition of, is it important or is it not important? But it just feels urgent, so let's just do it. And urgentia, which is how I describe it, and you can see it in companies where people are looking slightly frazzled, which means on edge all the time. They're sitting on the edge of their chair all the time. They're on the move. They tend to move at a slightly faster pace. They drink more coffee. Their hours extend. They say things like, I only really get stuff done between 5 and 8 o'clock at night. Whoa, okay, these are all clues that urgentia has taken hold. We need an interrupt.
Yeah. And Simon, what is your simple definition of attitude? We talk a lot about attitude and shifting attitude. So how would you describe it?
I try and unravel it at the beginning chapters of the book, and then I realised I'd written so much in the beginning chapter, it was bigger than all the other chapters, so I pruned it all the way back. But it's just the choice. And we've talked about it a lot in this conversation so far. The ability to stop, notice, and decide. That's what attitude is. I'm going to decide what it is. The real definition, or the original definition of the word attitude, or one of the main ones, is in the aviation industry, in that attitude applies to the angle at which the aircraft is approaching. So we know what altitude means, that's the height it's at, but attitude is the angle of the plane. And if you watch children playing with airplanes, they tend to just fly flat, land, fly flat, as if it was a car going up and down. And then they learn over time that actually to land an aircraft safely, it needs to have the right attitude. And the right attitude for a safe and smooth landing is just slightly tilted up. And obviously experienced pilots know exactly the right attitude to get their aircraft at for a beautiful landing. And the other definition I remember researching around the time of the book was, I think it was around, Darwin talked about it, when he was doing the origin of the species work in the early mid-19th century. He talked about attitude referring to the approach an animal has to their habitat and their choices, which obviously would be deeply or semi-conscious, unconscious. So that's a very long way of describing. It's choosing how we set ourselves up. It's the angle of approach with which we approach our lives. If you don't get your attitude right, you'll have a bumpy landing.
I love that. I never knew that the term attitude comes from aviation. Wow, that's amazing. And what attitude do you think leaders need to really make their teams and organizations thrive?
Well, I think particularly through the period of lockdowns and COVID and so on, has potentially become a wonderful time for leaders to renew and to consider what's my impact, which of course is something I love to talk about. And more across the world, I think commerce is all about ethical business and work-life balance, so people being at their best all the time. It's those two things. Yes, everybody will have in their various organizations a commercial imperative in terms of profit and results, But if you haven't got those first two, the ethical approach to your business and something in the order of work-life balance, then it's going to run out. You're going to have issues. So for a leader, their attitude is, as we've talked about many times now, it's about the ability to think and observe. If you like the aviation metaphor, to think, what is our angle of approach? How do we set ourselves up? What are our meetings like? How could we be more effective? When are you at your best? When our best meetings happen, what's gone on? What have we set up? Are we setting ourselves up for success? Or are we setting ourselves up for just a repeat of what's happened in the past? It's a great opportunity now, I think, as we slowly come through the lockdown and we start to get back in community and back into teams together, spending time together, really investigating, what do we actually now want? How do we want to grow our business? So that's where I'd say leaders, it's a great opportunity now to approach life in a really fresh and forward-thinking way.
Yeah, and there's the term restart, or the word restart, which I hear a lot in organizations in this context. Let's restart, let's rethink. So it's a great opportunity for them to choose a different angle, so that the road is not bumpy, but it's smooth landing, and that's a lovely metaphor. Yeah, and based on your enormous, huge experience, I read that you've coached more than 5,000 hours one-on-one. How long does it take for a person, a leader, to shift their attitude?
It could be instantaneous if they're ready for it. So willingness and ability, if you imagine that on a 2x2, some people are really willing and feel able to move and shift their attitude straight away. And for other people, it can be a bit of a journey because they'll think that there are obstacles in the way to make a change. Okay, well, I don't think there ever are. But if we want to go round the loop of moving your obstacles out of the way, then we'll do that. So it could be instantaneous. I work, and if you look at it's now approaching 1,000 people I've coached on a one-to-one basis. I'll probably have a little party on my own as soon as I reach the 1,000th person. I'll let you know.
Oh, definitely.
Some of the people I've worked with for a program, so I might just have 4 or 5 conversations with them, and clearly the imperative on me and them is to cause some kind of an attitude shift in just 4 or 5 conversations, and it can be done, but I'll be a little bit more incisive perhaps in my dialogue with them to really get them to shift faster. So it's not brutal, but it's more brutal than perhaps the longer term relationships. Some people I've worked for many years, so I might still be having a one conversation with a month for several years, and my role with them becomes more of a nurturer. So we'll investigate what shows up, but I'll nurture their attitude. And if they were to stop and look back, they would be able to see their attitude has shifted over the years, and we're able to do that together. So I become more of a mentor, perhaps, or as a sounding board in those longer-term relationships. And I'm blessed that I've had such a rich mix of clients, not just in the nature of how often I'm engaging with them, but also in terms of the challenges they face, the situations they're in. Amazing people.
Yeah. And the word sustainability, I guess, is a buzzword nowadays, but it's super important. And I often ask myself, how sustainable is this, what we do? Because at some point our clients leave the relationships and the coaching relationship, and they continue the journey on their own. How sustainable is that attitude shift? What do you believe?
Well, I think we can go back into coaching itself. Without coaching of some sort, personal development is at risk of not being sustainable. People might read a great book. They might go on a wonderful course or attend an event that maybe, possibly, could be profound in shifting their thinking. But without coaching or some kind of momentum support, it's not sustainable. Companies spend thousands, millions and millions on personal development programs and hope that the impact of that 2-day course they went on at the beginning of the year means that they are an awesome employee for the next 5 years. Well, maybe, but the chances of it being sustainable are low without support systems. And that can be obviously engaging a coach, such as ourselves, that's our profession, or engaging in supporting their internal staff to become more powerful as internal coaches themselves.
Yeah, I believe that through helping them grow, if I may say so, internal coaches, this is how we can create sustainability. And I completely agree with you that coaching is the approach that really sparks these aha moments, these insights, and this can be sustainable. Yeah, and now moving more to your impact, because I believe that we can thrive on purpose, and when we thrive on purpose, we make huge impact in the world. What impact do you want to make in the world? Now it's a time of rethinking. You already are doing, but if you look ahead of time, what impact do you want to make in the world?
I'd love to be able to shift everybody I interact with, both professionally and personally, forwards a bit. And
that's amazing.
That's what I want. Everybody, every conversation I engage with, and I don't make it overly conscious, I'm going out to improve them by one step today. That's not there. I think because it drives me, that's my inner purpose, that's my guiding light, that every conversation I have with anybody, whether it be the postal service that I might bump into, just delivering some post, to engage with everybody in such a way that is improving. I mean, that sounds really wonderful and angelic. And I'm sure there are days when maybe I'm a little bit frazzled and I might not be in that mode, but that's what I intend. And any engagement, I was involved in an event yesterday, and it was tough because we're trying to find new ways of using technology right now. So I was presenting a behavioural workshop to a team. 6 were in the room. 4 were remote in different countries. So my role was, I didn't really want to be seated because I know I'm more demonstrative and I can communicate more when I'm standing up. But if I stand up, I'm further away from the microphone. They can't quite see me. So it was a real challenge to use technology for this mixed audience. But my job is for all 10 of those people to have delivered something. So sometimes that comes on as a really big challenge for me, in that if I'm speaking to a room of 150 people, I really, really intend to influence all of those 150 people a little bit, some of them a lot. That might be unrealistic, and perhaps it is, because there's always going to be people in the room who'll say, nah, wasn't for me. That's okay, but I do my utmost to shift my messaging all the time to cause a change.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And it will depend on the readiness of people, but I'm very confident, and this is how it works for me. I go to an event, and even if I hear just one sentence, this impactful sentence can lead to a dramatic, major shift in my life, and this has happened in the past. So I really trust this. So maybe you thought you just had an ordinary conversation with someone in the nearby shop, but this conversation might be super important for them in that particular moment in life and can lead to amazing shifts. So that's a beautiful purpose and the way you want to impact.
Every conversation we ever have has that potential in it. It might not come to the surface in that conversation, but it always has that potential. And I'm aware of the potential of that potential when I go engage in any conversation. And today might just be, let's just be pleasant. And hello, how you doing? Great to see you. Thanks very much for your help. That's enough. But be open to the fact that this could be one of those opportunities. Let's go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My mantra is, when you protect your purpose protects you. And this has been working definitely for me, especially in these challenging times. So I would like to ask you, how is your purpose protecting you today?
I've mentioned it a few times, and particularly over the investigation, the introspective investigation I've enjoyed, in inverted commas, for the last 18 months. And my purpose is always there. Just carry on being Simon. And it guides me. if I didn't have that, all the questions you've asked me today, I would probably have to sit and think, what would be the right answer here? What would be the best answer for me to give Ellie here? What could I include here? I haven't done that. I'm just speaking from within. And hopefully my answers have helped, and maybe the listeners are able to get something from my approach. That is my purpose coming out. That's me oozing out. It's guiding me all the time. It doesn't mean, I remember some people saying in the early days, does that mean you just wing it? The expression of just turning up and winging it? Well, sometimes if there's prep to do, I'll do the prep. But if you haven't got an inner purpose protecting me, guiding me, you need more and more prep and planning, and it becomes a little bit more robotic. And that's definitely not the case. Yeah. So my purpose keeps me going, and it's there all the time.
Wonderful. That's simple and beautiful.
Thank you.
And what simple note you shared already, but what else would you like to share in terms of one of your favorite simple notes that could inspire our audience today?
Well, yes, you're right. We've mentioned a few from the various books, Genscher 343, but I'll mention one which people can access without having to buy a book, which is on my website, and it was something I wrote in January this year, during my dark time, and it's called What's Your Story? So you just need to go into the Simple Notes section on the website and look for What's Your Story, which is one of the more recent ones that are in there. And it's an opportunity for you to look, what is the story I'm telling myself? And by the way, you can read it or you can listen to it as a podcast as well, which is available on SoundCloud. And I offer up my example of the two stories that I could run and what's the impact on me of my story. Because what we tell ourselves sets us up, for all the things we've talked about today, sets up a series of events, the people we meet, the way we think, the ideas we have, the words we choose to use in any situation come from your story that you repeatedly tell yourself is true. Is your story serving you right now? Is it an opportunity now to upgrade your story, change your story? And it doesn't mean tell untruths, but it means attitudinally shift it. So I would advise people to go there, because that might be a great place to start.
Oh, absolutely. And people being aware that they write the story, nobody else, not the circumstances, but they run the show, if I may say so.
And we hear ourselves more clearly than we hear anyone else, because obviously the resonance of our voice, we hear it through our ears and also inside our head. All the chambers and channels inside the brain and the bone structure, we hear our story physically. So we feel the hearing of our story, and that has massive impact. So if we say, my life is tough, I'm running out of time, as an example I used earlier, then that's what we hear. And our brain says, okay, if that's what we think, I'll prove it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember from my own coach years ago when we started working together, she told me the throat is the chimney of the heart. And I really love that. And I use it very often in conversations with clients. It's so important to be able to have that space where someone is really interested in you and listens to you and listens deeply, so that you can talk through and share your story and hear that story. And if you don't like it, shift that story.
Yeah, like that. That's nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I would say, let's keep it simple and thrive on purpose. Simon, where can people find more of your work and listen to your podcast? Can you share with us, please?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned it. My website is Simon Simply. It's simontyler.com, SIMONTYLER.com. All of my podcasts, and there are about 60 of them, which is just me talking my simple notes and elaborating them a little bit more. They're available on SoundCloud, and that's, again, just simple Simon Tyler. And they're also in iTunes. Again, just look up Simple Note Podcasts are in iTunes. And I'd love to connect with people. Connect with me, and I'm open to connections through LinkedIn and Twitter, although I don't tweet very much, but LinkedIn probably is my main social media communication channel.
Yeah, and I will leave this information obviously in the description of this episode so that people can access you. And I'm really, really grateful for your time. It's been very inspirational and wonderful conversation. Really lovely. Thank you so much, Simon, and stay safe and keep it simple.
Thank you ever so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Thrive on Purpose podcast. If you're ready to embark on a transformational journey, you're most welcome to engage in a one-on-one conversation with Elena on the website thrivingleadership.net.